Welcome to the Town of New Canaan Town Council regular meeting for Wednesday, September 22, 2021. It's 7:01, according to Sven. And notice this will be a virtual hybrid meeting. You can join us through Zoom. The meeting ID is 842-1004-6647. And the passcode is 532384. And you can find that on the Town of New Canaan website homepage, where you'll find our on the calendar, where you'll find also our agenda. The meeting is also available on channel 79 in New Canaan. So with that, the first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise, face the flag. Would you lead us, Boy Scout?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, take seats. Would the Vice Chairman please take the roll?
Penny Young.
Here.
Steve Carl.
Here.
John Engel.
Present.
Sven England is here. Christina Ross.
Here.
Tom Butterworth.
Here.
Liz Donovan.
Here.
Rich Townsend is absent. Mike Morrow. We'll hang on to that for a second. Robin Bates Mason.
Here.
Mark Jimsky.
Present.
And Maria Naughton will be absent this evening.
Excellent. Do we
Have a quorum.
We have a quorum. So the meeting is called to order. Second item of business is the minutes. The approval of the minutes for the August 25th, 2021 regular meeting. Do I have a motion to approve or amend the minutes? Approve.
To approve.
Do I have a second? Okay, Steve Carl, got that? Any discussion about the minutes?
I did see that Robin's name was misspelled, and only because my name is probably the one that should be misspelled. I just wanted to put it out.
Why?
Okay, so we'll just check on Robin's name and
In one of the motions, I think, or one of the votes. But anyway.
okay, so we have no further discussion. All in favor? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, now public comments. So I don't know, do we have any members of the public besides Tiger on Zoom?
There are some folks on Zoom.
Okay, so there being only two in the physical audience, even if any of them want to address us and let us know why they're watching the town council meeting on, I'm curious to find out why they're here, but so if they'd like to address us, that's open too. But would Hillary or Eileen like to address us for anything?
Yeah.
Nothing? Okay, we're good.
Share plus.
And Rita, would you like to address the town council? We're at that point in the meeting. You're good? Okay. There being no public comments, we'll move on to first Selectmen's update. Kevin Moynihan, wherever you like.
Suppose.
Does that mic work well enough?
It does. We're not going to see them.
We won't see you. It'll be a disembodied voice.
Otherwise, we just said get to see his back. So go ahead, Kevin. Let's go.
All right, good evening. On the COVID front, our weekly positive cases are declining this week. We seem to be in a very controlled situation. Next week, we are doing our bi-weekly community testing, and so far almost every day is totally negative. So it's good that people are getting out and testing.
Where is community testing, and is it open to everybody?
Open to everybody. We give the sign-up sheet every week on the Thursday night call out, and it's at the paddle hut right now, but it's going to be shifting to somewhere else soon because the paddle hut will start in October for paddle. And next week we will restart community vaccinations for the seniors over 65 for Pfizer only. Unfortunately, most of our seniors locally got Moderna. So on the other hand, we are told that a lot of seniors are finding vaccinations at CVS and Walgreens, which are not subject to the Connecticut Department of Public Health limitations, which has not let Connecticut providers begin But anyway, now that it's been authorized for 65 plus, we will begin that. Location to be determined, not necessarily Lapham, but and then just a quick rundown on our capital projects. The high school roof is reaching completion. The Sachs solar has been installed, not yet energized, and we've obtained a great Z-Rexes for the high school, which now we'll work on installing solar at the high school. And Sachs condensing boilers have been installed. The Sachs CHP work is commencing, and we're continuing to work on the town hall and Lapham CHP systems. Gas will be coming to town hall in a few weeks. And Eversource plans to do their further expansion on Upper Elm, Pine Street, and Grove Street later in the fall. And finally, Main Street is going to be repaved very soon. Hurrah. So Playhouse, we're working on both an operations plan and the rehabilitation plan. As you'll see from the ARPA fund request suggestion we're putting in. We have a lot of burden of proof there with the Board of Finance to explain the project. The PD Building Committee, as you know, next week we'll have an all boards meeting on Wednesday night to present the two architects' proposals, one for renovation, one for building new. And then Soundview Lane cell tower is up, as you know. AT&T is installing their equipment, and it should be operational by October. Ponus Ridge Tower should be, they're going to start with the municipal consultation process in a few weeks with it, and they don't want us to waive the 90 days. So but should get to the siting council by certainly about the end of the year. And then the ARPA fund matrix you have, which we passed on from the Board of Selectmen, and I'll be joining your meeting next Monday night to help with that discussion. As you know, our express trains came back. They're a little different than they used to be. They make all stops through Greenwich and Worcester to Rye, but so it's a little longer, but they are express, or they are one seat trains except for the 531. The 531 is not yet an express. We have about 500 out of 20 versus last year's 1,268 renewals on commuter parking permits, which is making progress. We have a couple hundred people who have deferred in the 2-year deferral. And finally, our new assistant fire chief started this week, Albie Bassett. Chief Jack Hennessy announced his retirement at the end of October. And we just announced that Diane Wilson, a longtime employee of our Human Resources Department, has been selected to be our controller, replacing Joanne Noon, who went to Stanford with Sandy Dennis. So we're thrilled to have Diane move into that position. She has a great resume and talents that we really have been underutilizing. She's been part-time. She's been doing the pension work, but anyway, Diane's a great new controller for us. So that's kind of what I have. And
I'm sure we have lots of questions. We should just raise a finger if you want to ask one. I'll start with the solar on the Sachs roof is complete and is about to begin on the high school roof. Do we expect when do we expect the benefits of those solar? Is that something that we're going to see in this fiscal year? Is that something that's coming online soon?
Well, actually, the advisory committee, the Selectmen's advisory committee, has asked us to, by budget season, have a consolidated report on the energy we're saving, both with respect to the CHP units that have been installed and the solar. So we'll have that in a few weeks as we go into budget season.
So we're going to get an exact. They're going to have an exact, or they'll have a better estimate.
Well,
how much we'll save and
we've
when.
had estimates, and so far, Mark Robbins, our consultant, says we're on target with our estimates. So it would be nice to see dollars actually saved.
Go ahead.
Verizon towers. Do you know what's going on there? I'm hearing that Verizon's down.
Tucker has a scheduled call with Verizon next week. I'm a Verizon customer, and I've been noticing. I don't know what the problem is with the Verizon. We're going to find out next week.
Relations representative, I reached out to him and we scheduled a meeting next week.
Okay.
I'm hearing the same.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
What are you all hearing about Verizon?
The service is terrible. People are saying some of the towers are down, but don't know if that's true.
Well, sometimes they're down for servicing, but for some reason it's been spotty. I've also seen Frontier trucks, which are the back haul for the cell towers at the towers. So there's maybe something going on with
Right.
Frontier. So All right, see you Monday night.
Wait. You're not getting away that easily.
I
Main Street paving, we read in the paper that this is, that, I guess, which roads are gonna be done by this spring? Is that right? Can you remind me?
Oh, Tiger, you want to?
Yeah,
Can
can
we
we?
give a summary? I mean,
He said Main Street and paving, so I know that there's a lot of people
Main Street is the biggest
anxious.
headache. People are really want to get Main Street done.
Right.
So-
So what's that look like, Tiger?
So, Main Street from Farm Road to Lakeview Avenue will be repaved. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks. I'm just confirming with Eversource that all of their procedures and their tie-ins are complete. They're missing one tie-in at Woodland and Maine, but their engineering staff feels that that's not necessary since it's fed from two different locations. The Woodland service is fed from two different locations. They don't feel that they need to tie that in now or within the next 5 years. And then we're looking at Old Studio Road and Downriver Road. Downriver Road's complete. I think all the houses are either on or they're not gonna be on. Same thing with Old Studio Road. I think there's one service left. Once that service is done, we'll repave that street as well. The residents got together, banded together, and made a concerted effort and push to make sure that everyone who wanted service got service. So those are the three that we're going to do, and then I have a meeting with Eversource planned. They're paving the person in charge of their restoration later this week to then discuss what's happening next year. And the thought is that everything that had been done in 2018 on the Eversource side, so that's in essence from Farm Road to Bank Street, east and west of South Avenue. So South Avenue towards Park Street and South Avenue towards Main Street, all of those roads will be repaved. Our MOU said that they had 2018, 19, and 20, 3 years to put in the main and all services. We gave them an additional year because of COVID. 2021 year, we feel that they should in 2022 we should be able to come back in and resurface all those roads. And then the following year, we'll do the 2019 roads and then move our way forward through that.
I'm going to ask Kevin about the ARPA list, but before I get back to Kevin, on the ARPA list is a skating rink, and they talked about paving a parking lot at Waveney for the rink. Can you, is that, and I think I heard before Thanksgiving. Is that true? And what's that going to look like?
That is true. That's our plan. We had planned to repave the milled lot in the center. I guess you would call the soccer field lot or the softball field lot, the L-shaped lot in the center of Waveney. That was created out of pavement millings a while ago. Now they're based due to traffic and the sun beating on it. It's basically reformed itself into one nice asphalt bed. So our thought was, since we get some potholes here and there throughout, was to pave that in its entirety, square it off and pave it. Then once it was determined that they wanted to put the rink there, we felt that was kind of a nice synergy. So we'll be bringing a contract to the Selectmen within the next 2 weeks for the repaving of that lot, and the contractor will jump on it. And we'll be done before Thanksgiving. We'll be ready for placement of the rink as that goes forward. At least that portion will be done.
And the water main, pipes up and down, well, in the middle of town on Main Street. How long are those water main pipes? The ones that are up against the curbs. How long is that work going to continue? And when do those pipes go away?
They are right now working on tying in all the temporary services. So those pipes there are the temporary services. They've got to tie in each individual business from Cherry Street up to the town hall. The town hall and the firehouse are actually on brand new main and won't be affected, but everything else will be. So they have to go in and do the services. And then at that point in time, come back in again and then put in the new main, and then reconnect as well. So it's going to be about 2 months or so. We're going to be pushing time into early November to get that done. They'll be working every night, 4 or 5 hours and 4 or 5 days a week at night to get that done. Eversource is currently in the same location trying to finish up their gas line. They have 35 feet to go, 11 feet deep to get through many of the obstacles that are in the way. They feel that that's going to take them 2 to 3 days. And then the gas main that services 42 Forest Street in that area will be complete. And at that point in time, they'll go behind the town hall and start laying pipe for the town hall and our buildings in the back parking lot.
So since that gets us into November, and I'm sure all the merchants and all of us are wondering for the Christmas season, what New Canaan's going to look like for the Christmas season. So you're saying that the gas work and water main work will be done. How about what's the plan for our sidewalks and outside dining at this point and the bump outs at this point? What do you think that's going to look like for this Christmas season?
So the water mains have to be out because they're temporary services and they're in the gutter line. So we can't really plow with them there. So that work is mandatory to be completed. The sidewalks and the bump outs, the police commission gave us until October 31st to maintain the existing barricades. And our plan is to come back in and bump out at least the northern side, which is the Playhouse side, this season. We have a couple of conflicts with some transformer vaults on the southern side, but the feeling is that we can put in the northern side bump outs and then remove the barricades at that time. So you'll be looking at new portions of brick sidewalk and granite curbing, in essence, from the South Avenue intersection up and through the Playhouse frontage.
Does anybody want to ask any more questions of Tiger? Go ahead, Robin.
The Locust parking lot, is that going to be paved after the gas work?
That keeps on getting pushed off. We got a lot of
Right.
engineering work to do on that parking lot.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. The parking lots, the gas work that's coming into Service Town Hall will actually go through the access road and then through the Playhouse lot. And our intention is to repave at least the Playhouse lot when they're completed. I don't know if they're going to finish in time for this season or we'll have to attack it first thing in the spring. But that's our goal.
Steve. Hey, Tiger,
Yeah.
that Main Street paving, is that going to be a skim coat where you guys just go in temporarily? Because you're going to rip that up again, aren't you? Or are you actually are you really doing a full paving job there?
It's a 2-inch mill and pave. Yeah, curb to curb. The only area will be affected later is in front of the cemetery and across to Harrison Avenue when the transmission line, the Aquarian 36-inch transmission line goes in 2023 or 2024. And that piece will just get milled out and repaved.
And they decided to go that route rather than the whole way, right?
They
Harrison.
they went up Harrison to South Avenue instead of going down Main Street and up Farm Road. Yes.
I mean, it just
If they had, we
Main
probably
Street
would be
makes me
delaying.
cry. Tiger, Main Street, we paid so much money to redo that road. And when I drive up that road, it's unbelievable how nice it was and what it looks like now. It's actually insane.
It's like it was my child, Steve. So it's like a baby, So yes, I feel the same pain, if not more.
That's why if they really need to put it back to the way it was. I mean, 2 inches, if that's where it was, but it feels like they went down like a foot. So
Yeah. Well, we hired the best contractor that we have, FGB Construction, to come in and do the work. So we're hoping that he's going to be able to reshape it and put it back to the exact line and grade that it had prior.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Tiger, do we get a leaf sucking machine truck?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Did we get a new truck for leaves? Did I see it in my walk today?
You were out today?
Yeah, I saw it. It wasn't doing anything. It was just You saw a new vehicle.
They all
Yeah,
look-
And I-
no, we actually, no, those are, our vehicles just look, we make sure that they look really nice, but we do have, our VACOL, you might have seen it right before it left. It's actually gonna be in a CASHO show, the Connecticut Association of State Highway Officials. They asked for it to be in their show on Thursday, so we dressed her up and shined her up and then sent her up to Wallingford.
all right, I thought we had another machine, so. my bad.
Because it looks so good, right?
So since we're talking about projects and you mentioned the ARPA list, I wondered,
You have that on your agenda. You want to wait? I'll join you. for
is
your
it on the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah.
6.
Okay, so we'll tackle that later.
Oh, I would ask Sven, when are we going to get the rescue truck?
It's supposed to be in next month,
Yeah.
was the last that I heard. They were completing it and then it was going to be checked to make sure that it fits through the doors. And then there's equipment mounting and radios. That was the last I heard. I haven't talked to Jack, except to say congratulations. So
Oh, I got one more. You said Playhouse. When do you think the public, how's that schedule going in terms of the operating of the Playhouse, not the repairs of the Playhouse?
Well, we're working on the operating plan.
The operating plan. So are you at
We
the,
need to have before we can get the Board of Finance to authorize the,
well, there's the plan and the authorization. Are you still talking to multiple?
No.
Or have you picked an
we're-
operator?
my feeling is the commercial operators are always out there
Okay.
potentially, but we're focusing on a different kind of plan. So, but we're working on it. It's not ready for prime time.
Okay, so nothing's been decided. So when people ask me, oh, what's going on behind closed doors, I can tell them that nothing's been decided, that this is
and-
very fluid.
Plus the fact that, the COVID environment, people aren't rushing to the movie theaters, so
But if you go to a cocktail party in this town, somebody is going to tell you what that movie theater needs to be. It needs to be, somebody will tell you it needs to be first run movies. Somebody will, then you will turn around and somebody will tell you it needs to be art movies.
Right.
So people are very interested. And when do you think you'll be able to share with us what that,
we probably November.
okay. We'll bother you in November, right after election. Okay. Got it.
Tough guy here.
So if there's nothing further, town council rules is up next. Penny.
Okie dokie. First, I will apologize for sending an old version of the rules. And fortunately, Tucker picked up on it. So as I sent you this morning, you have both the 2014 copy and the 2020 copies. In the 2014 copy, the town lawyer went through it and made some suggestions to accommodate what the new rules are for electronic meetings. Some of these may or may not remain after next April. Because that's what the authorization is for their existence under the existing mandates coming out of Hartford. So I will entertain any questions that you all may have about the entries on the 2014 town council rules that the lawyer has inserted into the document.
So if we go back in history, help me out, Steve, Carl, but during when Roger was around, there was great debates over whether we should allow electronic meetings. And the town council way back then felt, I think, strongly, I mean, it wasn't close, that we should be here, physically present, and not allow town council people to phone in.
Right.
And there's a lot of debate.
It was a long debate. There was a lot of debate. And the council's opinion was that it's a big commitment to be elected and represent the people. And being in the room together makes a big difference. If we can be in the room together, it's so different than being on a Zoom call. And we've all lived through the Zoom calls and the Zoom years. There's no eye contact, there's no body language, and there's no real debate back and forth. So that's one of the reasons why, back then we said, you need to be in the room. We need to see you here, and the public wants you here. So that's why we discussed and went with that. So it was a big debate, though. There was a lot of pushback, especially, in Roger's case, because he wanted to be on the road working and call in. And we actually had occasion on a speakerphone back then. We didn't have video, where, you'd have somebody calling in from the road, and it was difficult. It was really a difficult thing to manage. It's much better now with video, but that's why we went back and forth. Now, if there's a state statute that overrides that, then there's nothing we can do about it.
Right.
But we can still voice our desire, if you will, for people to be here, because I think it goes back to a real town meeting where people come, they gather, and they have a meeting together. And that's really the genesis of why we're here, is, we're coming together as a community once a month to discuss the issues of the town. And I personally think it's important that we're here, but that's my feeling.
So the other issue that came up while Roger was on town council was whether or not you could vote over the phone.
Right.
And that's another issue. Is that part of the change in the statutes?
Right.
Yes.
In Hartford and in Washington, DC, you have to be present in order to vote.
That did come up during the
Right.
Roger debates.
That's right.
We said if Congress has to show up in person, so should we.
So should we. We are elected officials, and we're expected to be here. I think, as Steve just mentioned, I think what's coming out of Hartford right now is going to override that. And when those mandates are relaxed or taken off the records, then I think we can go back and study again how we as a body feel about electronic meetings.
Would you still allow the public to watch, even if we had to be here, would we still have this kind of situation where people could join from home and watch and ask questions and so forth? Do you think that would?
Well, I think
Or that's
right
part of that.
now it is part of
Right.
the statute. And I think that's something we would then discuss again. I personally think it's been wonderful to have more community
Yeah.
involvement. I mean, I actually have people stop me in the grocery store while I was watching last
Right.
night, and other than you kind of got to get a life if you're watching the town council meetings for your activity, but that was a joke. I think it's something that we then would go back to in April or whenever this is taken off.
Well, we can
mandate
have the
from-
conversation now. I think
Right.
there's two decisions.
Yep.
One is that we'll always have electronic meetings, because we've now gotten much better capability. We've now gotten into the habit. So we're capable, we're in the habit, and the public has just, likes to participate that way. But it's a whole different question to get to what Steve just said, whether we are expected to be here to debate and whether we are expected to be here to vote. That is a separate issue.
Right?
And so, and the state can override in periods of emergency and set emergency measures. But I think what we have to decide is what's best for the town council for the next 10 years, not for the next 6 months. What are our rules for ourselves?
Okay, and do you want to decide that tonight, or do you want to decide that based on what comes out of Hartford next year?
I want to decide, I think we should decide what's best for New Canaan, independent of whether Hartford decides to override us and, during emergency periods, we should decide what's best for us during ordinary times. And I think we should start that conversation tonight.
Okay.
I would be inclined to continue to expect town council to be here in person, unless the state forbids it, and to vote in person.
We have attendance rules right now.
Right.
So
I think we
see
just
no
did-
reason to change
No,
the tradition. Because it'll automatically go back to our normal structure once we get to April.
I mean, well, if nobody's gonna,
Well, I would just say that there may be times where someone might say, well, if I can't, if I could participate remotely, I could do that, but I can't, so I'm not gonna go. You know, they just say, I'm not gonna come to the meeting because I can't physically be there. And so it might be nice if, you know, there was either you could get a dispensation or maybe once a year, you know, sometimes things happen. And, you know, people would like to be there, they'd like to participate, but for whatever reason, they can't get there that night for some reason.
Well, but if we're online, no matter where you are, you could watch the meeting. I think our issue is, you
Can you
know,
vote?
would you be able to participate in
Well, that's
in the
what I'm
debate
saying.
and vote?
Right.
And I'd say no.
I'd be inclined to say no. I mean, I could, if nobody was gonna make the argument for the other side, you know, I was gonna make it, but no, so I'm glad you did. But
Mhm.
I still, I'm conservative. I think what you just said, that this is the land of steady habits, and
We don't like
We've had
change.
excellent attendance, by the way, of town council members. So what's the problem?
Well, right now, that's true, yeah.
But
you
you ready we
really-
might get older? Is that?
No, you really don't know when there might be a time where someone can't make it. I mean, I know for me personally, it's extremely hard to be here now at 7 o'clock. And that is one of the reasons I'm not re-upping. I can't do it anymore. And I'm not saying that I would go to, you know, make every meeting electronic. I wouldn't do that. I'd work really hard to come as often as I could. Tonight, I almost didn't make it. But, you know, I just think it'd be nice if there was some kind of, I don't know if they get out of jail card, but you know, some kind of, you know. if you could-
exception.
if there was some kind of circumstance that you really wanted to be there, you wanted to participate, you wanted to be able to vote, but you couldn't for whatever, maybe you got sent out of town on an emergency, but you still wanted to be able to vote. And you could do that electronically if that was allowed, but you can't physically be there for some reason. It should be an exception. I get it. I'm not saying that we should do it every time or we'll fall apart, but.
I mean, you could put a clause in there that the council could vote on that particular occasion to allow a vote, because it could be an important vote where you do want everybody
Right.
to vote. I mean, it would, you know, I mean, a $10 million allocation, or, you know, something that's a big deal, or the budget, or something that gets in the way of somebody coming. I could see that where the council takes a vote. Okay, Liz had an emergency, she wants to participate, let's let her participate and vote to do that. But I think as a standing rule, it should be there, because Penny and I, and, you know, there's a lot of people that have been on this a long time, and, you know, we've flown back. I know I've flown back from vacation to be at a meeting. You look over the years at how many times I've skipped family events and done all kinds of things, skipped dinners and any number of things to make this meeting a priority, because I believe that I'm carrying 20,000 people on my back. And that's the way I've always looked at it. And I really feel it's important to be here.
If I may, the timing on the town council used to be 7:30, allowing for the commuters that were on the town council to get off the train and walk the 5-10 minutes to town hall. Since we pushed it back to 7, even with kids' schedules was a problem, has been a problem. So I really think that maybe we should consider that and bring it back to 7:30.
Who moved it to 7?
You did.
Well, that was a dumb idea. No,
No, what it was, we started having meetings that ended at, 10:45, 11.
Right,
And we're like,
right,
wait a second, we can't do that. So we moved it back a little bit to try to get out of here a little earlier, but we haven't lately, knock on wood, we haven't had those 11 PM.
No, we've tried very hard to make it a 7 to 9, 2 hours. Anything more than 2 hours, we should take something off the agenda or make a special meeting or put it to the next month. Because nobody's effective after 2 hours. That being said, some major controversial issues come up before town, and we get a lot of public input, and that can tend to push it. I like the idea of carving out in your rules the ability to make an exception. I will say that typically to have everybody in the town council vote requires a meeting. So there might need to be an easier way, maybe a straw poll if by electronic record, meaning you can get a quorum of the town council, just spitballing here, but if you can get at least 7 people to say email, yeah, I have no problem with Steve Carl attending electronically next time. If you can get at least half the town council to say, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. If Steve Carl was the kind of person who is making a habit of it, it would be cumbersome for him to try and get that done, month after month. and, and it would be noticed. It wouldn't be just showing up.
Let me run this situation by you. We've got a divided issue. Okay. You have somebody who wants to phone in
Mhm.
and you have another person who wants to phone in.
Mhm.
They're on opposite sides of the issue.
Mhm.
Would the town council then vote to allow one person to attend by phone and disallow the other one?
According to the way I just described it, Steve Carl could say, I'd like you to make an exception so I could phone it in. And Sven could say, I'd like you to make an exception for me as well. And each of us would be making a decision. And you're right, there could be bias entered into it.
Exactly.
Absolutely. But
Sorry.
Not from this group or many groups I've served. with. I mean, that's
Bob?
that's carrying
that's
it.
just a fact of life.
Yeah, that's carrying it a
Between
little
you
too
and
far.
me?
Washington might do that,
I
but we're not
trust you.
doing that.
I trust you, but
But nevertheless, it is a personal,
Yes.
an awkward personal moment. If somebody says, I'm your friend, I'm a good guy, give me an exception.
Yeah.
Well, when do you stop saying yes to that?
Well, to me, the way I would have it a vote added to the agenda, like we do any agenda item where we have to vote it onto the agenda and
Night up.
Yeah. And this person had a last minute thing, can't make it. They're on Zoom. They want to vote tonight. Let's take a vote and see if we want to, allow them to vote. I mean, that's the way I would do it.
I think there should be a carve out of some nature, but my concern is that who are we to deny or disenfranchise a duly elected member of the town council? If we were to vote, and if I said, guys, I'm sorry, I've got a trial in the morning, I'm in another state, right? I cannot appear. I want to vote on the school budget, and I can't be there. And you guys say, it's your problem, that tough luck. Well, I got elected by the town, and they expect me to be able to vote. They also expect me to appear. So my concern is disenfranchising a duly elected member of their right to a vote. So coming up with some sort of a balance, and maybe, Tom's, I think, right on the point. I mean, we have an attendance, policy in our rules to begin with. So we don't ever want it to be abused because that's subject to potential expulsion. So I'm a little concerned about even us voting, on a 5-4 vote and, I can't appear. Well, people who elected me are like, why can't he vote? I'm a little concerned about.
Can't vote
that.
because you're not here.
Right. So
It's just like Congress
right.
and Hartford.
It's possible.
It's
I don't know.
a 200-year tradition in America that the elected officials are expected by the people to appear,
Right.
to vote.
But don't they have proxy votes?
No.
No,
Not on base.
But they vote via some sort of mechanical device from their office. They don't have to physically be there.
they're in the
Oh, they
building.
do.
They have to come race down to the room.
Do they themselves or can they send somebody else?
they have to do themselves.
Yeah, it's physical.
have to be here to break a tie? Can I phone it?
We can't find you. You'll have to get 7 of us to think that that's a good idea.
The vote that you take has to be taken in public. You can't vote ahead of time to allow someone to vote.
Under this statute, that's true. That is
Okay,
true.
so Steve's plan is the only plan. You believe that we'd have to do it as part of the meeting, all in favor of letting Steve, phone it in.
You couldn't decide ahead of time who you're allowing to vote. It would have to happen.
So you would vote to seat them electronically.
Right.
my concern is that how could you ever say no?
Yes,
Well,
I am
here's the
concerned.
thing.
How
The
can you
point,
ever say
the
no?
point is that you want to recognize the fact that this is an exception. I mean, I don't expect this to happen more than once a year. You want it to be okay, well, this is a big deal because this person really wants to be at this meeting and really wants to vote, but they can't be here. And we've got to, basically break our rules that you're supposed to be here and vote them in. Because, to me, you should be here. I mean, our schedule is out a year ahead of time. There's 12 dates, actually 11 dates. There's 11 strong dates that have to be met.
And you have an attendance requirement.
Yeah. And we've discussed this a few times, but everybody has been here at almost every meeting. I mean, we've all had great attendance. So this is just sort of that laying the law down and letting the new members who are, most of them are here tonight, know that this is the way we do it.
And I think you're really only boiling it down to how many votes are really contentious.
Whether it's a majority or a super majority.
Right, so you're, a bond appropriation is going to get approved if, for the most part, unanimously. And if you're not there, you kind of already know that. I think there are really only one or two meetings where if someone has a death in the family or something, that's what I think Steve's
Right.
talking about, where we have to make an exception and we have to find a way to put it in.
It's COVID.
Exactly, but I don't think if someone's, hey, it's not really a huge vote, but I'm traveling on business. Well, tough luck. You should
Yeah.
be here.
My mom was in the
so I'm with you
hospital.
on
So
that.
it should take a super, to Tom's point, we can't make it too easy. It should take a super
It
majority.
has to be, you have to have a really,
Otherwise, because it's going to be easy to get a majority and to get it every month, if you're well-liked, on the, and nobody wants to say no.
just to your point, we know when these meetings come well in advance, right? It's not,
So maybe there should be criteria.
yeah, this has to.
It can't be a
pop up.
business trip.
It could be, family illness. My mom was in the hospital, but I would want to be able to vote.
Yeah, but we need to.
It
find
would
a
be
way
too
to
difficult, I
resolve
think, to put in our rules exactly what the criteria are. I think it should just be a high standard of a supermajority of at least, 9, 75%, at least 9 of the, members, or 75% of those in attendance, to get in. So, or more.
You want to put a limit on how many times it happens in a given period?
No, because I think that, to your point, let's say there's a death in the family that's required you to actually be away for a long period of time. You couldn't, this is not a choice you're making. And, you want to participate fully, and we should have the right to evaluate each circumstance. If you're taking care of a sick relative in California, it becomes impossible to commute back and forth, for the meetings. I wouldn't prejudge the circumstance.
So why not just keep the criteria, which is we have until April, where it's with extreme emergency or security or health and the discretion of the chairman. Maybe not discretion of the chairman, maybe a vote, but why not just keep what's in there, the language right now going forward? So it couldn't just be a business trip. It couldn't just be.
You want to just make it a quieter affair and which is the discretion of the chairman, or versus a more public vote, including everybody. You could go either direction.
No, I'm saying you might have both.
Because-
Have the vote, but also that, in the language that's here, it's an, extreme emergency could be someone's in the hospital or a funeral, but it can't just be, I have a business trip, or my kid has a play, because we do have these dates, but I think to Liz's point, if someone's in the hospital, there's a funeral and it's a big vote.
Does that need to be made public? I like your idea of discretion of the chairman.
Right.
I won't be the chairman, and that's why I say without any bias. I actually like that
Well,
because
it's
it
already
preserves
what's
the
in here
privacy
until
of the
April.
circumstance.
Right. And I don't think it needs to be, to your point, I don't think it needs to be stated, the issue. I think that could be, well, I don't know, maybe it does have to be stated. No, it doesn't.
It's a discretion. of the
Yeah, so it's discretion, just use the language going forward.
Does anybody prefer discretion of your future chairman?
No
To a
transparency.
public vote? You like public vote?
Disagree. It's not transparent to the
That's
public.
right. I agree with you.
The public has to see that.
Yes.
And we all need to be on the record, who voted yes, who voted no,
Okay.
And you could also put a caveat on the discretionary power that it shall not be unreasonably withheld.
That sounds so lawyerly.
I forget that.
Why didn't you do this for Roger?
Why didn't we?
Have exceptions for,
Well, for one thing, there was no screen.
None of
The-
this exists.
The technology made it really difficult to, through the phone, understand whether somebody
We
even
were
wanted
doing
to
it-
be addressed,
we were-
wanted to address the
We
crowd.
were doing it at the nature center, and basically what it meant was somebody took out their flip phone and put it on speaker.
so it was pretty lame. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
The public couldn't really hear through channel 79 what was going on. So technology was a major reason, but Roger made the point that Congress is seated. Hartford is seated, and we should be seated too. And he carried the day with the argument.
Was that before or after his lawsuit to the town council?
Yes. Both.
We already have it in our rules. It says in the event of an extreme emergency, security or public health event, and at the discretion of the chairman, the meeting allowing electronic participation in whole or in part by electronic equipment may be called.
What
So
section is
it's
that?
it's a second paragraph,
Of
Article 1 or Article 3, pardon me.
And so all we've really done to do that, all that would remain. And I
Yes.
guess what we're saying is, and upon a supermajority vote of the town council, an exception can be made for an individual. Because that says discretion of the chairman,
Right.
an emergency, we might have an electronic meeting. What you're saying is, and in addition to that, an exception may be made with a supermajority vote of the town council.
Cool.
Any other issues on the rules? So the other thing we're adding to the rules is the library.
Okay, so that's on the 2004, this is on the 2014 document. On the 2020 document is the wording for the library. Okay, so if everybody remembers, and obviously I had neglected to really remember that we had rewritten a bunch of things in our rules last year. And so this 2020 document, one of the issues that I was and Christina were concerned about at our last meeting was the representation of a town council member on the Board of Trustees for the library. The library did, as Lisa Oldman indicated at their board meeting, the night following the town council meeting, did vote in the two members from as nominated by the chairman of the town council. John and I met with Eileen and Deb Cannon of the library, went over that wording, and we added additional wording which memorializes the election of the two trustees to be concurrent with the duration of the agreement between the town and the library, which is 25 years. Because one of the things I was concerned about is if those trustees were not protected from amendment by the board, they could be voted out of the bylaws.
Not the individuals, but the
The actual
position.
representation.
Okay.
And this memorializes it for the 25 years or the length of the agreement, whichever is longer. Right.
So to recap what you just heard, the library changed their rules and added 2 seats to a potentially 25-member board. The second thing is that we're not going to, as we had anticipated, do it every year after every other year as we elect new town council members. The change is we're going to nominate them as the library's seats their new classes. Every 3rd year, they seat a new class of trustee, and we're going to work with that schedule. So change number 2. So item number 2, we're going to work with that schedule. What?
No, that's not true, because it's 2 members and.
And they have 3 classes.
and they-
John, why don't you call Eileen up to the mic?
Yeah.
You should come up and talk on the mic.
And those members are not town council, they're not elected officials, they
Right.
are.
But we were gonna time it after we had an election. It was gonna remind us, oh, now is the time. But there was a lot of conversation about them changing from fiscal year to calendar year at the library anyway, on what they call these classes. So why don't you tell us what we concluded?
Right. So there will always be 2 trustees that have been nominated by the town council on the library board, right, during during the course of this agreement, right? And the issue is just how to onboard them. We have 3-year terms. So we have a library trustee is elected. They serve a 3-year term, and then they are potentially can serve another 3-year term if they're reelected to do that. So they have a full 2 terms generally. So the way we had talked about onboarding them is we also have a statutory requirement by the state of Connecticut, as do all libraries, that we need to keep our board of trustees equally distributed across the 3 classes that we have. And so that's kind of how we think of it in terms of classes. Our fiscal year runs from July to June. So we think about it in terms of that year timeframe. So we talked about the ability to we have that we can bring those 2 seats on, and what we would do is bring one on probably when you're ready in the next coming year to kind of serve a 3-year term from that time. Then we bring one on that would then probably serve a shortened term and then get reelected, for another 3-year term, at which point. And so we have to set up a way, and we talked about it, probably most likely the best way to do it is through the budget process, because the library comes every year to the town council as part of the budget process, is, kind of looking at where those library trustees are, what the terms are, and when the next cycle would be up in terms of having new nominees as part of the budgeting process, because it would be looked at every year.
So therefore, in January 1st, 2022, we might name a short termer and a regular termer on those days. And one of them might be 3 years plus 3 years. And the other one could be 1 year
2 years.
or
right.
2 years, and then maybe
'Cause we have,
renewable
at the
for 3.
moment, We have 4 open seats. So we have this issue also with bringing other non-nominated board members on, because we recently changed our bylaws in the last year or so to increase the size of our board so that we could better address, kind of the types of things that we're trying to do, most specifically fundraising.
What are the 3 classes that you mentioned?
They're just terms.
Oh, terms.
They're based
Okay.
around terms. So
Like
your
class of
term starts in
21.
Class
Got
of
it, got it.
2022, you're finished in 25, and then
Okay. They're all
Reelected.
equal trustees.
they're all equal trustees.
Not low class and high class.
Upper
Separate
level,
classes.
lower deck.
We don't have any separate classes.
John, can I ask a question? So how do these new members that I guess we put forth to the library, how do they interact with the town council? I mean, we're sort of,
That's a great question, Penny.
Right, and after we wrote this, I went home and thought more about it. And I've said to John, there should be in this paragraph, and that the trustees shall report to the town council semi-annually. Right, as we expect of the audit committee.
At least semi-annual.
Why not quarterly?
We could. It's
When does the library meet? Is it monthly?
Every month.
Okay, so it should be quarterly.
Well, I would say,
pretty
I would just put in at least, and then since there are board members, we can drag them in here by the scruff of the neck and make them talk.
Well,
Well,
the other thing
think
that
at
we,
least.
that we talked about, which was important, and I gave a copy to Penny and to John, is, we've had since 2015, 2016, very well laid out kind of what the roles and responsibilities of the trustees are, in terms of governance, advocacy, kind of duty of care, duty of loyalty, and fundraising. And so, part of that is, ensuring that, obviously, I mean, and we talked about this, the idea is to try to have a partnership, kind of the way it's worked with Steve and, Mark on the building committee and others, and hopefully not an adversarial relationship, but, so trying to figure out how we continue to have them report and obviously, but yet uphold their duty as a board member to a nonprofit.
That's a big piece of it during this meeting, and I attended electronically, so because we vote, but I was able to sit in, and the advocacy part of that is important to understand, because like the audit committee, we're tasking these 2 folks to be our liaisons, sort of knowing what's going on at the library, and they're supposed to report back to us. But once you're on the board, the advocacy goes to the library. I mean, they want to be full members of that board and participate and do everything that the library members currently do. You don't just want 2, town council agents sitting there. I mean, these are actual participants on the board. We even talked about financial expectations too, as far as donations and whatnot. So there's a small component of a financial donation there as well. So
And these are the, I mean, and I shared this with you, I mean, these are the criteria against which we evaluate all of our nominees in our nomination process.
Can you make that available to the rest of the town council?
The what?
The responsibilities of the board of trustees.
Oh, yes, that'll be certainly part of when you're picking your nominees.
Yes, part of
It's
it.
going to come back up again then too.
So if I may say something on this amendment, the one thing that it doesn't clarify is that it says that the chairman of the town council shall nominate, but it doesn't require a vote of the town council, and I think it should.
Okay.
yeah, I agree with that. I think, if you're going to put somebody on, they should be voted on because it's a
It's a representation of the
right,
council.
right. I agree with that.
Representation and reporting.
I think the quarterly reporting is a lot. When
That's
I
a
think
lot.
of the audit committee and I think of the ethics committee and I think of a really rigorous budget season. And I think how often do things change with the library in ordinary years when they're not building a new one? And, so I think you could say, use your words, at least semi-annually.
Yeah, because while you're building, you may want to be talking to them more frequently.
Easy for you to say quarterly, Sven, because you won't be sitting here at 11:30 saying, and do we have anything else on the agenda? Oh, yeah, we have to hear from the library's representative.
John,
Well, it could be a written report too. It
Right.
doesn't have to be.
John.
Yeah.
we paid the dues.
Okay,
John,
so
if I may, wait, I just want to say we have two representatives. There's no reason why each cannot be present for two meetings, bringing up a report quarterly to the town council. I just don't want the reporting to be after we vote on the budget or before we vote on something that's before us. And I think it's necessary to have that update. It shouldn't take that long.
And don't forget though, Lisa actually comes, Lisa has said anytime the council wants her to present, wants her to, do anything, she would be here within a month's notice. So we've called her many times saying, hey, could you give us an update on this, that? So you've got Lisa as well as that little, touch as well. So I don't know. I mean, quarterly seems like a lot to me, but
You have two
We don't do
members,
anything
each of them can
quarterly.
appear twice.
Yeah. I
We
know.
don't do anything quarterly now,
Yeah.
so it's just not sort of part of our rhythm.
Right.
We don't still recommend you go with at least.
At least, just in case.
okay, so then, the chairman of the town council
Just add
with,
that and a vote.
And a vote, yeah.
Does
I
that,
was getting there.
does that need to be
Would you
changed?
like
The
to give me the
MOU was
wording?
voted on.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Does that
ask.
need to be changed?
What?
Well, the MOU was voted that it was the chair that would be appointing.
Right.
So would that need to now go back and change the MOU?
No, it's just a process of how you're doing it. I mean, we're making the rules for our people.
Well, this is the
Well, it could be
wording that's in the-
ratifying the decision of the,
Yeah.
so, if.
So the chairman of the town council as ratified by the town council,
Yeah.
right?
Ratify, yeah.
Works for us.
Our rules making that.
Shall nominate two members to the library's board of trustees. The individuals nominated as additional town trustees will be subject to approval by the library in the same manner it conducts when approving a new trustee. These are your bylaw. That's your wording. The additional town trustees will be entitled to vote and will be counted for purposes of a quorum. The nominees shall not be elected officials. And then we will put in, and they shall report to the town council quarterly.
At
least
least
quarterly.
semi-annually.
Can I ask a question? When did it change that it cannot be an elected official?
I think it always was.
It was always,
Always
yeah.
was.
We always
Because
talked
at
about
first
that.
we talked about having two members of the town council.
Right.
Yeah,
But that would be ex officio. They wouldn't have voting rights
I see.
because it's a common.
Right.
Okay.
Anything else?
no, that was,
We're good. For now.
we're good for now. And then the only other thing is if we're going to vote on it this evening, obviously the date at the end of the rules will change to be tonight's date, or if we're
I
doing
think
it
that-
next month.
I think we can vote on it next month.
I think we should, given the
Okay.
2014, 2020 issue and the fact that we've now written by
Okay.
hand and everybody should see it.
Yeah,
This
Okay.
is the final.
All right, so I will have a clean copy with the merging of 14 and 2020.
It also gives the lawyer
Right.
a chance to look at it.
Yeah, one more time.
Many
Okay.
thanks for your efforts, Penny.
Yes.
Yes.
thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
job,
Penny.
Penny.
Thank you, Eileen.
ARPA.
Next, American Rescue Plan Act update on the American Rescue Plan relief funds. Are we having a conversation? Would you like to bring us, who would like to give us a report on where we stand and how the meeting went the other
Mark's-
night?
Mark's chairing it.
We have a meeting, a joint meeting between the Board of Finance members that were chosen and the town council members, which include Penny, Christina, me, and Rich, who will be present for Monday. And the Board of Selectmen, Kevin will be there, and I believe Kathleen, based on her comments on Tuesday. So, and it's a general discussion. The Board of Selectmen have already proposed, or they have a matrix, which I sent to the members attending on Monday, and it'll be a broad discussion with the help of the first selectmen and what they've already proposed. And I think the goal is to have a framework, put parameters around what we believe and the Board of Finance as well. It'd be nice if we're all aligned with our thought process on the ARPA funds. So that's, so we haven't had a discussion yet. It's just, we're getting together. I think it's best to work from the bottoms up, and the Board of Selectmen are doing that. It's working its way through to us. And I don't necessarily, well, I'm not going to go into any more detail.
So just to be clear, okay, a couple things, because for a lot of people, their first encounter with any specificity came from the New Canaanite, I think like this morning, and they read this and it sounded like it had been decided because the selectmen had met, and then there was a meeting where a lot of you attended, this week, and then boom, this list gets published and people are like, oh my gosh, did I miss something here? So that's very helpful. This is what we saw this morning. What I think I heard you say was the selectmen's list, and it hasn't even been vetted by the Board of Finance, much less the town council yet.
And the first selectman's been very clear about that.
Right.
So
but you got to say things more than once.
Right.
this
And
town.
so we ultimately decide, as Kevin's pointed out, they have put a matrix together. We think that it's best that the Board of Finance members and the town council members meet beforehand so that there are some parameters that we can report back to the town council and to the Board of Finance so that there isn't nothing shocking to anyone, like some things are during, say, budget season or stuff like that. So I think we're doing it the right way.
So one thing I noticed was the list in the paper was roughly $3.5 million. And the total amount that might be available to us is somewhere in the order of $6 or $6.5 million. So so why are we doing this in halves? Or how are we?
No, we're not really doing that.
I don't think it's in halves.
This is what we have so far.
Okay.
As in my email to you, I emphasize this is a working document.
Okay.
And the auditors have said we really ought to follow the budget process, which normally the selectmen would make recommendations to the Board of Finance. The Board of Finance would work on it and then send it to the town council. Unlike the budget process, where you can't increase things, you can only decrease things, or send it back to the Board of
So
Finance.
you only have $3.5 million worth of good ideas, and you're looking for another $3 million.
I know the Board of Finance has another idea, which is going to take a chunk of money.
Right. So there's, if you look at the bottom of that matrix, there's that $3 million of lost revenue, right? So if you add those numbers up,
yeah,
it's $6 million. So
it is almost $6 million. It's
Right.
not 2.8. Where we've gotten the 5.8, it's really almost $6 million.
yeah, it's almost, it's the way that I read it.
But the
asterisk.
reality is this is a process. We ordinarily don't go through this process because ordinarily it's like, what's the current budget? What do we need new? This is totally new to us all in terms of how should we do things that will be impactful to respond to COVID for the town.
All right, so in no particular order, so we've got the first list, the $3.5 million list. And then the next idea outside the list was, as Nick said in the article, and you've just said now, revenue, our loss of revenue is another idea beyond the list. We also got a proposal, we got an email from Chief Karolakowski with an idea, that the police station would like, would like a program funded. So do we have a process, or does Board of Finance have a process for evaluating additional ideas beyond the list?
Well, one thing you might consider, John, is having a public hearing in your, where are we, October meeting? To get some more public input based upon the ideas that are being put forth.
John, I think the intent of our meeting is to set very broad parameters, like, and it was discussed in the Board of Selectmen meeting, that we don't want anything that's reoccurring. We don't want to give you the money and then there's an olive branch on the other side of there. No, these are the parameters we're talking about.
What does that mean, olive branch and parameters?
Well,
You better explain it
parameters,
to me
let's say that that's for all of us to decide, but a parameter could be, we don't see a need to put money into the general fund. That's a parameter. That's a non-starter. If we set that as the town council, Board of Finance agrees, then we don't have to entertain those ideas. And we can find $6 million where the money is needed, not the general fund, which, I mean, that's maybe my personal opinion, but I'm just one person. But that's what the whole idea of having this group get together and have this discussion.
I think one idea is to have a general meeting, a public hearing at our general meeting. Or you might, when you get together with the Board of Finance liaisons, decide that maybe we should have we should have a special meeting, not at our general meeting. We should have a special meeting, public hearing that is only that subject. Because if there's a lot of public, input that wants to be made, they should probably make it in front of us and the Board of Finance, maybe jointly. So you might consider that and talk to them about that.
Okay.
So I have a question. What is the $3.5 million list that you referred to?
This is what the selectmen.
The selectmen,
Based upon-
I sent it to you. It was sent to you in here.
Okay, I didn't see it yet. I'm sorry. But
Did you
that
hand out
list,
copies?
is that, although I'll review it later, is that list based on a public hearing or a list
No,
of
we had a forum.
recommendations?
We had a forum in July. Right.
Okay,
We've asked our department heads for ideas, and I've got a number of requests. So based upon those, and then the selectmen yesterday looked at these and said, "This
There's
again,
about 10 things.
as a
So
working,
it's not-
as a working list." This is
so it's not that you went to nonprofits or outside entities and asked them to submit anything by a certain date?
That's coming from the foundation.
we had a number of people show up at the
Yeah.
forum and made written presentations for things. Yeah, so we
But
started a
it's-
process in July, and the process.
It's 10 things, and it's a
It's,
combination. The
It's a combination
YMCA
of a
is
lot.
on there
Yeah.
as a specific nonprofit,
Yeah.
but the Community Foundation is also on there as one of the 10. And it would be expected that the Community Foundation would divvy up that $250,000 among other nonprofits.
Not quarter.
So you see,
$1 million.
1 million.
$1 million to the Community Foundation, $250,000 to the Y, $100,000 for an ice rink. There's 10 items on their first draft proposal.
And
Okay,
I mean, for a first draft, I think there's a lot of thought
Impressive
that went
items,
into
yeah.
it. There's a lot of thought,
Right.
a lot of thought.
And we'll talk about these Monday night.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, no need.
But I think there's two. The Board of Finance is going to have two items to add. So
So my next question, the obvious question, is the timetable on this. So I said, is this the first half? And you said, no, this is just the first $3.5 million of the $6 million chunk of money. By when are we expected to make decisions?
well,
on-
first of all, there's going to be a transition in this body, and I think we ought to do it in November before that transition occurs.
Okay,
So do our work in October and then vote in November.
okay.
It will be changed in November.
November 2nd.
We have all new members. We have 4 new members in November.
Yeah.
After the election, they have to be sworn in and all that.
December.
They have to
meeting
be
is the first
seated.
one.
Well,
But they'll be seated at the meeting.
but also the Community Foundation's process starts, their grant cycle process starts, and they're gonna want to know if they're gonna have this money to deal with, because they want to communicate to. So I think we need to try to begin to give some direction in October.
Agree. We have to begin to get direction as fast as we can. There's no statutory requirement by
no.
Connecticut or anyone else. We're just saying we want to get this done sooner because of an election, sooner because of a budget season, sooner because of allocations process for the community foundation.
Yeah, we already have almost half the money, correct?
There's not that many decisions
Yeah.
left to be made.
It's not, we're gonna get the rest of the money in this fiscal year, so it's not really an issue.
Okay, that's good to know too.
You could have a special meeting in late October too, if you're ready. I mean, that's,
Yeah,
but
I just thought first step was to get the groups that were appointed by Todd and by John to get together and.
Well, if you're going to have parameters, which I think would be extremely helpful for the public's expectations.
Yes.
Get those set before you have the special meeting, so that people know the ground rules.
Right, and I don't think, we're talking very broad parameters. I think the idea was to at least set those, and that would be very helpful. I mean, we're not deciding where that $50,000 is, where that 100, it's just, hey, we want to allocate a third to XYZ, a third to nonprofits. I don't know, I'm just throwing.
If getting this done before the election is important, it's if, and we are almost into October, I see what I hear you saying is there's 2 meetings. There's probably an early October meeting, which is a public hearing where you have published the parameters as a result of your joint meeting or any thinking that, and this is how tight this is. You have a meeting, you make a few decisions, you and your counterparts call the first special meeting, and it's a public hearing.
John, if I may, you will be having a special meeting if the referendum deadline's met. So we will be having, if that happens.
That'll be another one. I mean, without complicating this, we may have a joint special meeting, yes, but for this process, I see 2 meetings. 1, a public hearing, and 2, the vote, the decision, like late October, because otherwise you're into November and we may just have to say, couldn't get it done, going to the next session. But if the first selectman and the Board of Finance wants to get this thing done before budget season, it's an October process. That's tight.
Yeah, but
the Board of Finance is
the
gonna.
other thing is for the capital items, they have to go through a special appropriation process. So we're gonna have to publish.
I guess what I'm saying to you is don't wait for the chairman or for all of us to, have a general meeting and decide what the schedule is going to be like.
We're moving ahead.
Our 4 people are going to tell us.
You said,
When- yeah.
we're moving.
You're going to tell us when those meetings are going to be and we're going to show up.
Our meeting Monday night.
Monday,
That's soon
7
enough.
p.m. Just to add more meetings.
I could see you having 4 Monday meetings in October to put this thing to bed.
I don't like Monday Night Football anyway.
Okay. Anything else? That was a great report.
Yeah, that's it.
Financial update, the highlight of the meeting. This is what we've all been waiting for. Are we still solvent?
Of course we are.
All right. Do we still have $30 million in the bank?
We have 29.4.
Wow. Wow.
Where'd you go on vacation for the difference between 30 and that, right?
I did go to Costa Rica, but I didn't spend any of it.
Okay.
So I did provide you just an update, and this is where we're closing out fiscal year 21. For the most part, I think the numbers are not going to change much. We've given the final numbers to the auditors, and so at this point, it's really just a matter of audit corrections. And so these numbers are close to final. We will bring you final numbers in November, I believe, and then you will be approving audited financials at your December. So I'll start with the expense side of the sheet, which is the front page, and you have this, I think it's item 7 in your tablets. So initially, we did approve a budget last year of 152.2 million. That budget was revised to 155.7. You approved two special appropriations related to the board. We did a $1.5 million for COVID-related expenses into the non-lapsing fund. And then this year, we also did 1.9 million additional transfer into their internal service fund as part of the budget process this year. So that brought the total budget, expenditure budget to 155.7.
When we go through the budget process this year, will we be looking at a budget reflecting on the original budget or the revised budget? When they talk about, oh, our budget grew by 3%, 5%, whatever, they're talking about the original approved budget, not special appropriations related to COVID.
Each department presents it differently. We provide both numbers. I think maybe just for consistency, maybe we'd want to say, you know, of the original is this much, of the revised is this much. But of the revised 155.7 million, we spent 155.3, so we came in just below that revision again. Part of that was because of those special appropriations. On the revenue side, obviously there weren't any special appropriations on the revenue, so we did the 147.7 million budget. We brought in 149.8, which is consistent with our collections this year. Also, we did have, as we've shared throughout the months, very good collections on conveyance fees related to property exchanges. We had a budget of $1 million. We brought in 2.8 from $1 million, so it almost tripled what the budget was. And so that made up for many of the shortfalls. In the other areas, we had some reductions because we closed some of our parts and whatnot, so some of those revenues came in below. So that made up. We lost quite a bit.
Can I just pause? So for those trying to figure out, how does that occur? In a normal year, New Canaan, 250 houses sell. Last year, we had something like 520 houses sold. That's how you get from $1 million in conveyance fees to 2.8. You had a more than a doubling of the number of house sales. But let me tell you that when you read in the papers about a shortage of inventory in New York, New Canaan, California, across the entire country, it is already having an effect on the number of transactions. We are not, what I'm here to tell you is we are not going to see another 500 transaction year. We're not going to see it may not even be 400 transactions. The lack of inventory is going to affect that next year. So we can't count on a windfall of conveyance fees next year. Not as long as our real estate market is out of balance with too much demand, too little supply. While it's good for the individual homeowner who feels that prices are going up and that he's gained equity in a period of imbalance, it's not good for Linda, who's trying to bank $2.8 million of conveyance fees every year to plug his gaps. Go ahead.
May I add something to that? I don't think that people have increased their equity. They regained it after losing it.
Depending on your starting point, yes.
Yes.
Depending on how long you've been there, yes. Okay.
Sure. So the third component of this, I've talked about the revenues, I've talked about the expenses, and the final piece is the fund balance. Where are we at the end of the year? So you recall that when we approved the original budget, we approved the budget with $4.5 million drawdown on the fund balance, just based on the budget as approved, knowing that in most years we don't draw down the fund balance because we collect a little bit more than we budget, and we typically come in under in terms of our spending. However, this was a different year because when we did the revisions of the budget, and I talked about those two special appropriations to the Board of Ed, the plan was to use fund balance to fund those additional expenses because we didn't raise any additional revenue for that. So when we revised the budget, we went from a fund balance drawdown of $4.5 million to a revised budgeted fund balance drawdown of about $8 million, based on the additional appropriation related to COVID. As the year ended, instead of the $8 million drawdown, we are actually ending the year with about a $5.4 million drawdown of the fund balance in this fiscal year. Part of that is driven by, as I mentioned, the special appropriations that we gave up front, and the over collection in taxes didn't fully make up for the expense because we had those special appropriations. If it wasn't for those special appropriations in any given year, we would have again over collected, over expense. But this again is by design. Even though we had a $5.4 million drawdown, you recall that we did receive $3 million in COVID-related revenues, and we will be receiving an additional roughly $3 million this fiscal year. Those funds have not been plugged into the general fund. We created a grant fund, that's where those funds are. So the $5.4 million drawdown does not include the $3 million that we've already received, plus the $3 million that we received.
And how much did the school system get?
Schools got about $1 million. But for theirs, it goes into a grant fund. It's not part of the general fund, but they did get about $1 million. So if you
Well, they can
combine-
still spend it. It's real money.
That's in addition to the $1.5 million and $1.5 million. We
Right.
gave them three, roughly.
Even 3 and 400,000 last year, roughly 3.5.
And in addition to that, they got another $1 million from
So-
direct.
That million doesn't come back to the town?
We got 3, they got 1.
That million does not. However, of the general fund dollars that are appropriated to them, the school district did give back about $1.3 million of the general fund appropriation that they didn't spend this year because of the closures, lack of athletics and whatnot. So there was some money this year that the school district is giving back to the general fund, and that's part of that 5 point.
I'm having trouble following, so let me just say, we started with, you said ordinary, a drawdown of 4.
4.5.
And then we said, no, but we're gonna add to that 3.5 to the schools, and that should have taken us to 8. But you said, but we didn't draw down 8, we drew down 5. And I think, oh, we didn't draw down on 5 because we had a better year. But it doesn't include money from the federal government. So why did we draw down 5, not 8 again? Which I missed that piece.
Because combined with the special appropriations we provided for the Board of Ed, we also had unbudgeted COVID expenses that we also incurred. I believe this shows we had about.
But those would take it from 8 northward, not southward.
Does this number net out the 1.3 the Board of Ed gives you back?
It does.
Okay. The 1.3 is from the Board of Ed, so that's.
That helps. That helps bring it down a little, but
Those are
that doesn't get me to get me from 8 to 5.
Getting there.
All right, so so let me go back. If on the expenditure side, maybe that will tell us where that money comes from.
There'll be a quiz at the end. I hope everybody's paying attention.
Multiple choice.
No, so for example, looking at the town side, we had an original budget of 37.9 million total, all town operations and whatnot. We actually spent 38.6 because part of that were COVID expenses that we didn't budget for. We were going to spend money and get reimbursed for. So that was part of those expenses. So when I talk about in any given year, we typically over collect and underspend. This was a year where, yes, we did over collect, but we did not underspend to the tune of typical underspending. And that's where that delta isn't as significant.
But we
Plus,
only drew it down 5, not 8.
Not 8, right? Because there was $3 million of expenses that didn't happen from the special appropriations. The special appropriations occurred, but on the town side, there were additional $3 million of expenses that did not occur. So had we not done the $3 million to the Board of Ed, we would have actually come out roughly break even or positive total. But we did plan to draw down about $3 million to fund COVID expenses to the Board of Ed. And that's why you have that fund balance drawdown this. And the COVID expenses that we incurred, the revenue, a big chunk of the revenue that's reimbursing those expenses did not go into the general fund. We have it in the ARPA funds.
Okay.
Let me ask it a different way. What was our fund balance at this time last year? Roughly. I mean, I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head, but if it's 29.4 now, our fund balance has grown, I'm guessing about $4 million. No, not that much.
Yeah, when we closed the year last year, our fund balance was, total fund balance was 34.8.
Okay. Okay.
And when we had approved the budget with a budgeted drawdown of 4.5, our fund balance would have been 30.3 million. And when we did the special appropriation for the Board of Ed and all those changes, we would have further drawn it down to 26.8. But because of the over collection and slight underspend, we're actually ending at 29.8, which is pretty much to where we thought we would be at the very beginning of the project. I said we budgeted to draw down 4.5, we draw down 5.4. So that's what fund balance is. In terms of percentages, we're actually going to end total fund balance of about 19% of total expenses. And unassigned is about 17%.
And our target's 15.
Target is 10. Board of
10
Finance
to
target is
15.
10 to 15. So on a 10 to 15 target, we're at 19%. On the GFOA best practice, there's 16%. So we are above both of those benchmarks.
So if Rich were here, he'd say we're overtaxing and we need to give it back to the people.
Which is
Spence here to say that.
in this fiscal year where you're budgeting to draw down $5.2 million in FY22 because of this over collection, which is what we do each year. We use some of the fund balance so we don't do that, so we don't overtax. So you make up for it that following year, is how we give it back. So we're always carrying forward that dollar.
So the people are giving us a free loan. Thanks.
It's called smoothing.
Yeah,
Smooth.
I'd like to
But
be
we're trying
smooth.
to get, well, I guess it'll remain to be seen whether our Board of Finance tries to get us down to 16, 15, 16 from the current 19.
Although Rich isn't here, so I will speak on his behalf. He would also then argue that maybe we're not spending enough on certain capital projects, capital items.
Right.
And it's only going to get more expensive down the road when we have to spend on those projects. That would.
So in any event, Rich would not have us hold 29.4 in the general fund.
Yes.
He'd spend it
Yeah.
two different ways.
I don't want to be Rich's proxy.
Okay. Anyone else have a question or observation? Was that the end? I don't
That
want
was
to
the
interview. Any questions, observations?
I'm not opposed to a larger, I'm conservative, so I like that big general fund. And I think we've got some big capital expenses coming along that the Board of Finance has already said, maybe we can use some of that money for, you know, rather than bonding, let's
Spend it
let's spend some of it. So,
instead of giving it back to the people.
yeah, well, I mean, it's going.
You
to
are
be-
giving it back in a different way.
It's, you're going to spend the money either way, so you might as
No,
well.
you could rein in spending.
At some point, a new police building.
Police building, you know, you've got the library commitment, the police building, you know, you've got the theater, the movie theater. There's a lot of big expenses hanging out there that, you know, you could look at, so.
With the price of money and the rate of inflation right now, you want to figure out how you're going to do that. There may be reasons to sit there and go like, it's a nice principle, however.
I guess you'll take this up at budget season, but
Yeah.
the point of tonight is that we're in good shape
We're in great shape.
and we have money in the bank. And more importantly, our budgeting works. We predicted, that we would basically carry a large fund balance on purpose into COVID, not knowing how long it would last, how expensive it would be, how much of a hit to revenues, how much additional expenses to our schools and our government, and whether we would get any money out of the federal government was a complete question mark, or from Hartford. And so reminding everybody that we went into this, I think, budgeting to hold a large fund balance, and you're saying we came in pretty close to what we expected.
Yes, and we also did find out today, just so we have an update, that FEMA did revise their reimbursement rules. We had submitted COVID reimbursements, and there were about $500,000 or so is the number I got from Bill today of expenses that initially were deemed ineligible for reimbursement because of the criteria that was set. They did change up that rule, and therefore we are looking at about another $500,000 or so of additional reimbursement that we will get because they've loosened those rules. And those expenses that were initially denied as ineligible are now potentially eligible. So we may be getting those in this fiscal year. And again, those were not budgeted, so those will be additional revenues to the general fund.
These are federal changes or state changes? Federal.
We had $6 million worth of hot federal money that we got to spend.
Apparently even, and more reimbursement and more coming all the
I
time.
mean, is it 6.5 or that 5 just goes directly?
Well, that 5 would be reimbursement for expenses. It would
Right,
go into the
that's
general
not-
fund.
you're right.
So it's not part of the 6.
It's not the
Not a bad
argument.
place to be, Steve.
But it would make the argument for people like Nick who say we do have to cover loss of revenue. We're getting reimbursed an additional $500,000 against loss of revenue. Makes the argument that that's already been taken care of to some degree.
Let's face it, we're a very lucky community.
Okay, if there's nothing further for Linda, we can move into committee reports. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
Linda.
Bylaws and ordinances, Mark and Steve.
Nothing to report.
Education, Tom and Maria.
So two things from the most
Oh, you've
recent,
got like a whole book there.
I'm not going to go through the whole book. Two things from the most recent board meeting. One is that the Board of Ed is starting to consider open choice program, which would, I'm going to oversimplify here. I don't remember all the details, but basically the state is extending a program that currently is in effect that has, I think, 3,000 students around the state are moving from a lower economically successful town to a more economically successful town, from Bridgeport, from Hartford, to smaller towns surrounding them. And so it hasn't been practical for New Canaan to participate in that because the bus trips from the eligible districts made it impractical. But now Norwalk will be part of that program. I don't know the exact effective date, but it's people are studying this now. And the question is, how many kids, if any, will New Canaan take under this program? The state provides certain money to cover the costs. It's not going to cover all the costs of. It certainly wouldn't cover the average per student expense that we think about. But how much, whether it'll be more or less than the incremental actual cost of adding one more student or 5 more students, is sort of up for grabs. But it comes down to more a policy judgment by New Canaan schools as to whether we want to pursue this opportunity for potentially diversity, and to what extent. Typically, it begins with a couple of kindergartners, and then you move through the years from there. And in some towns, it's Westport, they already have like between 50 and 60 of these kids, and they renew that on an ongoing basis.
When you say you start with kindergartners, I'm starting to realize that once you accept a student, the expectation is that they stay in the school system until they're done.
It's
And
not
so
a-
that's why you choose to fill gaps in your kindergarten program and expect that balancing of your kindergarten, or right sizing of your kindergarten class continues all the way up, whereas it may not. But you keep those students.
Yeah.
You don't rebalance.
It's mandatory to keep them. Once you take them in, you cannot.
Right. You have to treat them as if they lived in New Canaan.
Exactly.
For all purposes. So that is going to be, I'm sure, the subject of much discussion. Maria Weingarten spoke after the meeting and made shared an excellent piece of data that in, I think, Westport, they may have incurred $1 million worth of special ed costs
because of this program,
unreimbursed from the other district. And so it's not free.
No, it's not.
So is this a plan to unload special ed kids onto other districts?
That's my fear.
Well, obviously that's an issue. I don't know if
it's too early to know that.
Yeah, well, people take a lottery, the kids families participate in a lottery, and you don't exactly know who you're getting. There may be a way to put some criteria on, but you certainly can't exercise any criteria once the kid joins your school district.
So what I think I hear you saying is they're studying whether they want to be in the program. They haven't decided that they're going to be in the program and now deciding how much they want to be in the program.
Right.
They're still deciding whether they want to even join the program.
Yeah.
Got it. And then when they do make that decision at the Board of Education level, do they then just make that decision, or do they take that to the Board of Finance or anybody else? Do they make it all by themselves?
I think it would just show up in their budget, and it would be another item that's debated in budget season, but no different than any other expense. They would make the commitment. And
Can they make the commitment if it's unfunded?
well, they don't, like any other expense of the Board of Ed, there is no specific allocation of what's funded and what's not. It's like they have a pool of money, and they would have to make it work, including this commitment in that pool of money.
Got it.
So just to be clear, my understanding is that right now we're spending about $24,000 per student. The reimbursement would be somewhere around $7,000. If it's special ed, we may get some reimbursement from the state, but we may not. And the cost for special ed is much higher. From what the Board of Ed has shared with us, it could be as much as $250,000 per student.
Well, there's a lot, you said a lot. First of all, I don't think that the reimbursement is as much as $7,000, but it's some comparable amount. It's certainly going to be a lot less than our per student expense. The question is, what is your cost when you have an empty seat in a classroom? What is your incremental cost, marginal cost of putting a student? It's not $24,000.
That's the average of all students.
Well, you've already spent the money for heating and the building and the teacher salaries and whatever. So adding a small group of students is not a $20,000 plus expense. But special ed is an unknown.
I was saying, unless it's
Special ed costs are supposed to be paid for by the sending district to up to a reasonable amount.
But
So in Westport, if Maria's right that they're $1 million overspent on special ed, that's spread across like 60 students. And, so it's still the average would be less than.
Well, they're probably not all special ed students.
No, not at all. Not at all. That may be, but it's, the Board of Ed is trying to look at all the potential exposures and issues.
They should.
And to
But
be grown up about it.
right now, we're one of the few towns, if not the only one, that allows the teachers to bring in their students, and we get $0 back per student. So we're already doing some of that and absorbing the cost.
Well, I think some of the issue is creating a more diverse population, and whether that would be a benefit to students
I
and
don't
families.
disagree with that, but I think
Yeah.
it's not an equitable exchange
Equitable in what sense?
in terms of reimbursement of cost.
Nor is it designed to be.
Yes.
Well, we
I
don't,
think they would say they
Yeah.
know they're not covering the cost, and that that's not the intent, that Norwalk would make New Canaan whole. They would just contribute. It's, what, the marginal cost, this is an important point he makes, is unknown, because you don't know. We don't really know what the marginal cost is. I think that that's part of why they're just studying whether they have 2 slots, 3 slots, 5 slots, because they have to understand at the last minute how many empty seats they have in that classroom. So that's part of what they struggle with is, marginal cost. If you don't know whether you have 2, 3, or 4 empty seats to get to your state mandated, limits, right? You're limited to like 20, you can't have 25 in a class, I think. So they're guessing on how many empty slots they have before they run into trouble, and you have to open up another section. So there's a lot going into this, and you've just added the additional variable of special ed. They thought they were taking in maybe the 4th student to fill the class, but now it's a special ed student who's not in the class. They're taught differently in a different classroom. So I guess the point is the Board of Education is studying it. They know that this is a really hard, but it's, what, on the other hand, it's a really worthwhile exercise to go through. It's probably something that we should be doing. They know that, and they're looking to see how they can do it.
yeah, because other towns, Fairfield has made a huge commitment into this program. Because and I think, as far as I know, practically every town is about to make some kind of a commitment to this program. And, you know, how do you look if you're the only one that doesn't do it? You know, is that the brand that you want?
The only thing, Tom, is that if you're booking those spots and you're saying that you're going to book them for the entire run from kindergarten through
13
12,
years.
there is absolutely no way to predict, because we can't predict year over year our attendance or our pupil numbers. I mean, we've gotten it wrong year after year after year. I mean, we've all sit here and said, how did you get it so wrong? So sitting here and predicting that we're going to be able to put extra students into our school system for 13 years is beyond crazy to me. There's no logical reason that you could do that in a community. And when someone moves into town with an 8th grader, a 6th grader, and a 2nd grader, you say, you know what? I know you worked hard. I know you got into town, but we've got to make some concessions here because we can't get you into the classroom because we've overbooked it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me. Well, it makes zero sense. I mean, I know we have to deal with all these mandates and stuff, but this
Is it a
one is like-
mandate?
This one,
No,
is
no, no,
No,
it's
it's
totally.
optional.
All right, I'll argue and I'll
hold-
tell you why.
So hold on, it's the beginning of a potential mandate down the road.
Mhm.
I just, I
Agree
just
with
see it as like the floodgates could open at some point. And, we've talked about regionalization, we've talked about all this. How do we know that this isn't the beginning of that?
That's right.
Well, but I don't think whether New Canaan participates or not is going to make it becoming a mandate more or less likely.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a statewide program. It's not going to be what we do. Point number two, you can test it out without a huge exposure. I mean, if we have 4,000 students and you bring in 2, this is not a large, percentage exposure.
Yeah, but you said 40, you said
Yeah.
potentially 40, which I just did on a calculator. I'm up to $10 million over 12 or 13
No, but
years.
you're
That's a
not,
lot of money.
you're not committing to that.
I know,
You're
but
committing to 2
right.
for their school lifetime. It just so happens that Westport and Fairfield, to take examples, have liked it, have analyzed it every year, and have decided to keep expanding it. That was their choice. You could stop at 2 forever and never take another 2.
And we've done, I mean,
Those 2 and then they just keep going through school and you
Mhm,
don't take any
mhm.
more until they're
Right, you
done.
could, yeah.
Let me just make an argument with the real numbers. In our school system, there's roughly 250 kids per class. Let's just be
Per
honest.
grade.
Per grade in our school system. We have 4,200 or so students. And if you have 250 in a grade, and Steve, the big variable is kindergarten. If Dr. Lutzy were here, he'd say, I just don't know how many people are going to come in, and start. He knows that there's going to be a little bit of movement. So what I think is going to happen is he's not going to take a bet on kindergarten. He's going to take a bet when it's actually been established and known. So if all of a sudden his first grade class is at 240 and his second grade is at 230, he's going to say, I have opportunity. I am 10 short. I'm not going to fill all 10 slots because there is going to be some movement.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I hear Tom saying is that we definitely know in a class that could be as big as 250 in my example and as little as 230 that I have spots in my class of 230, that there is a very low statistical probability that 230 will swell of its own accord with New Canaan students over the next 15 years. And all they're saying is we want the opportunity, if we see an obvious hole in a class of 230, that we can fill it because our marginal cost is not that great in a class of 230. That's what I hear you saying is let us study it. We could get surprised with an statistically abnormal number of special ed students, but you know what? Somebody has to educate those kids. I understand that we worry about mandates, but I think that
Why shouldn't you? I mean,
we worry about mandates, but
seriously.
in all fairness, the state, talked about this and discussed this, and no mandates came down. Right now, we are self-determining, and we have to give the state credit. They didn't pass any bad rules to strip away our control this year. Thank you, Hartford. you know, we're going to do the right thing down here without you telling us to do it. They're going to see that we do the right thing. We do the right thing,
But why don't you look at what the effort was to?
I understand there
mean,
was an effort.
seriously, I mean,
but it was defeated, and they're giving us a chance to do the right thing. So I applaud our Board of Education for studying this.
May I?
Way to go, Board of Education. You know, study
just
this.
like-
We're going to do the right thing right here in New Canaan.
I just like to emphasize that the other towns receive state funding and New Canaan doesn't. So the cost of educating a child in New Canaan is borne on the backs of the taxpayers.
Yes, but it's not, we're not paying somebody tuition to do this. We own the means of education. And that's where John is talking about what is the marginal cost, right, to fill a seat.
Yeah,
Okay.
my only concern, Sven, is that you and I and John attended New Canaan schools, and we've seen a variance. When we were in school, we had 400 in each class. And that could happen also within 15 years. So what are you going to do then? My class had 420. Yours had the same. I mean, there were 1,600 kids at the high school.
And you guys had.
But that doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't, but 15 years or 13 years. It could
You
happen.
had the new prison building to go into,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
We had 18 freaking portables.
Just saying, we have
18?
history here. We can do it. You know?
Yes. Wow.
So, I mean, I'm just saying that this isn't something over a decade, things do change.
And we have no way out once we commit.
Right.
They're not talking about taking what's 250
No,
to
but-
450
and that's the
kids?
extreme. That's the
Yeah.
extreme, Liz. And I'm just saying that, it's when we say never can happen. That's all.
The biggest percentage in Westport and Wilton and Westport and Weston and Fairfield, I think they've been very proactive in this and have built up a number of students. They're at about 1.1% of their total student population. If you started with 2 students, that's a tiny fraction of 1%. So, and it's only those students that you're committed to. You're not committed to adding in future years.
I mean, put it to you this way, there's 2 different questions. There's one question of whether the Board of Education should attempt to try and fill seats. The second question is whether we're getting reimbursed appropriately. I think that all of us believe that the Board of Education should be able to try and fill what they perceive to be gaps. I think that the state could do a little bit more work on making sure that towns like New Canaan and Westport that do this are properly compensated so that we are incented to grow the programs. That would be good for New Canaan,
Yeah.
Westport, and Norwalk, and the state.
Yes.
So if they would
And you
figure out
know-
the math, then,
and that's not going to happen.
I don't know that. I
Well,
have
because there's
great
an
faith in our
because there's an
legislators.
expectation that we can afford it.
Again and again and again.
Yeah, I mean, I just from experience and having lived here my whole life, I know that New Canaan does things a lot better than the state. And I mean, it's not even close. We do things a lot better here than the state does. And I trust our leadership over the years to be able to make the right decisions. Unfortunately, the state has not been the same partner. So that's why I'm just a little cautious. That's all.
Me too.
What this debate
Okay.
tells me is that there's one reason and one reason only why you do this. It's because you feel that having a diverse population is more valuable to your children. If you don't believe that, why in the world would you step into this?
That's
There's so
true.
many unknowns.
That's true, but that's why all our tax money goes to Hartford and almost none of it comes back.
Exactly. It's a question of means.
Yeah.
I really don't get your point. I mean, do you think that your kids should be educated in a diverse environment or not? You know,
Yes.
what does that have to do with Hartford? That Hartford is on the dollar side of it. On the cultural side, that's where the decision's really going to be made.
Agreed.
I mean, we're more diverse now than we've ever been. I mean, I'm amazed at how diverse we are right now compared to when we were in school. I mean, it's I think we're much more diverse.
Some might argue that we have a ways to go.
Yeah, we got a ways to go.
Okay.
Some could
A
argue.
long way.
I just,
Well, this isn't really up to us anyway.
no, it's not. And I'm just hearing about this. So that was my initial reaction. Maybe I'll love it when I hear more about it.
Maybe.
I love Mike Morrow's expression. You were just sitting there and your mind was just going. Go ahead, Chelsea.
I mean, at this point, quite honestly, I think the conversation is a little premature.
Yeah.
Let the Board of Ed do what they do, vet it and, talk about it and solicit input. And I think there's a huge question mark on the funds and how this works. I mean, I was just on the Connecticut's portal on this issue, and it's like a graded system. You get $3,000 per child, if you only have a few in the district, and as you expand your head count, it can go up to $8,000 per year as assistance. So there's just so much. I've never even heard of this until tonight. So I don't want to really opine about it, but the goals are certainly laudable. There's no question about it.
Mm-hmm.
Are you done?
I would just say that for COVID, 98% of the teachers are vaccinated. And yet there are some employees, staff that haven't been vaccinated yet, but some of them are seasonal staff and part-timers and whatever. So they're doing well. No high school students are in quarantine right now. So it's sort of consistent with what Kevin's telling us about the town as a whole. It looks, things are going very well in terms of controlling COVID. You've heard about a bus shortage statewide that doesn't exist in New Canaan, partly because apparently we honored our contracts and kept paying drivers through COVID, and we won a lot of loyalty through that. And so, there are a lot of sports teams around the state that are not getting to their games this fall, but we're not one of them.
We could be state champs.
Yeah.
What's that? What's that?
Thank you.
However.
Finance, Mark,
Monday, 7 PM.
Be there, be square.
here, public.
Yeah, it's a hybrid meeting.
It is in this room.
It is in this
No,
room,
it is? Oh,
We moved it to this room.
okay.
Good.
and that's my 2 minutes.
Health and Human Services, Liz and Penny.
Yeah, just quickly, based on the last Health and Human Services meeting, Kevin already talked about all the COVID statistics, and his were more recent than mine. In terms of what Health and Human Services is doing, they are starting to do Medicare Part D enrollment. And Bethany made the point that basically, if you just want to do the enrollment process, there are people at Lapham that can help you with that. If you have problems or questions or need solutions, go to the Health and Human Services staff, and they're sort of becoming experts in that particular field. They're very happy that there seems to be an increase in community awareness for Health and Human Services. The police, other agencies, Adult Protective Services are all coming to Health and Human Services when they need help with clients, and that seems to be working well all around. And let's see. Oh, and the final thing is that Marcy, who is now the senior service representative of the department, is now having meetings at Latin twice a week. She started a conversation group, and she's also having sort of coffee with a cop at Lapham once a week for people that are for I guess for seniors who are interested. And that's it. Penny, you have anything else?
Infrastructure and utilities, Christina and Penny.
I don't have anything. Do you, Penny?
I don't, I think Kevin kind of covered it.
And Tiger?
And Tiger.
Land use and recreation, big meeting, right? On
Yep.
land use the other night. Robin,
Yeah, last night we had a meeting, our committee
Eventually.
with the Board of Finance liaisons. Steve Benko was there as well as Tiger. Some of the items we started off with the Conservation Commission, Chris Shipper presented. Basically telling the responsibilities of the Conservation Commission, which is for open and public space, monitoring of natural resources in New Canaan. They do the water testing, as well as Sustainable Connecticut. Part of the discussions he talked about was some of the things that the Conservation Commission was looking into. One of the things was the Green Link, called the Emerald Necklace. They're trying to get all the streets linked up. Problem with that is getting the crosswalks in. So that was discussed. Because the state roads with the crosswalks need the state study, which I think is 8,000 each. So you can't just put them in. So I know he talked about some of the ARPA funds, maybe doing that. Their budget's 24,000. Next, Steve Benko spoke, talked about tennis has done incredibly well. It's had a 400% increase. About 530 people are now playing at Mead Park. So 2 years ago, it was dying and it's completely turned around. The pickleball's in. Right now, residents don't need a pass. They need to make reservations, but they don't need a pass. They'll be discussing whether the pass needs to be something they purchase in the future and it be something with the tennis at Mead Park as like a court pass for everything. Paddle has been doing incredibly well as well. I think it was budgeted for 38,000 or 37,000 and they ended up last year bringing in 78,000 for that. So 279 adult passes have been sold for that. The pool did very well this year. And of course, this April, the bond closes out, so will be paid off. So however, there are, however, it is about 20 years old. So there's some issues that, things that need to be.
The pool is 20 years old.
Yeah.
I keep, when people move to this town, I say, and we have a new town pool. And I guess I've been saying that for 20 years. Oh, my.
Pool is so
My rap.
the bond gets paid off in April. The enterprise fund for the pool has, Steve said, about 800,000 in it. And the revenue this year for the pool was 579,000. Amy Carroll of the Board of Finance brought up the condition and the cleanliness of the pool. That seemed to be a problem. I guess the issue is that the pool used to be cleaned. It was twice or three times a week, but because of usage now, it's only cleaned on Saturdays mornings because the pool is used from 5:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock at night. So Steve's trying to figure out a way that could get more cleaning in.
He wasn't happy with the cleaning service.
So that was for the bathrooms. So the issue is that there was also some complaints about the bathrooms at the pool, and Tiger and Steve said that the people they contracted out weren't doing, they're looking to either improve or change. They weren't doing as well as they were, but I think it was an issue with also finding staff, the contractors this year. So I was on the pool, Waveney, they lost most of their weddings in the last year. It's starting to pick up again. The ADA construction is almost completed. If you've been there, the new ramp is in. That was about it for Waveney. There was some discussion if rooms could be rented out. There's discussion about the library, how it's no longer open to the public, if that could be rented out. The Waveney trails were brought up because they were washed out in the storm. They're going back to the contractor. And the last was the parks. Trees were discussed because there's issue with dead ash trees as well as beech trees, which may need to be removed. So that needs to be thought about later on. And then there's discussed about the Mead Park playground because residents have been upset about the garbage issue there. But if you bring in cans, they attract more garbage. And I guess some of the employees were having issues when they were picking up, as Tiger said, garbage cans with half soda bottles still with liquid in. It's just too heavy for the guys. And so that was an issue. And then there was just one last comment made about the high school letting out at 210 or 205, the Waveney with the all coming out through Waveney and just contacting the school and asking the kids to slow down a little bit, as Steve brought up. So that's it.
I thought that was not supposed to be part of the plan. The kids weren't going to be able to use that exit that was like for buses. No,
it's always been, you go in from farm and you go out. And I mean, it was during COVID and it stayed. So I don't know if Tiger.
There's never any, Tiger? Yeah. There was never any.
Yeah. It was always envisioned that it would be a one way in and one way out, especially in the morning. In the evening, they're allowed to exit either exit. In the morning, you come in on farm. In the morning, you come in off of Farm Road, and you have to exit through Waveney. And in the evening, you can exit through both exits. So I reached out to Deputy Chief DeFederico last night to ask him to put out the speed sentries, and I reached out to the Principal Bill Egan as well to tell a gentle reminder to the students to travel slowly through the park since it's a 15-mile-per-hour zone. So he said he would do that immediately.
And they exit on farm at 205?
They can exit on farm as well. Yeah, they both at that time. It's they can exit either side.
Thanks, Tiger. That was fast.
No problem.
I didn't understand the purpose of last night's meeting. I guess you had done the same thing last year at this time, but I don't, there's commissions for each of these bodies, each of these budget areas, and traditionally the town council members monitor those commission meetings and understand what's going on. So I didn't understand the purpose of a meeting like last night.
So when we came on, we were told that once a year, there's a town council committee meeting, and then the Board of Finance and liaisons come
This was
in.
the late,
Meeting is normally as we go to budget season.
yeah.
It's way ahead of.
September made no sense to them.
Yeah.
Oh, that was just because we hadn't met for almost 2 years.
I think what we wanted to hear Steve's concerns, going into budget season, and we'll meet again. Yeah, I guess traditionally we have, the liaisons will meet closer to the budget. You're right. As they set their budget, and then Steve goes through his budget with us. So that'll be an additional meeting that we'll have. So
So this was a catch-up
I
meeting.
just, when I was on the town council, our job was to monitor what the commissions were doing.
right.
And
Oh.
we do one budget meeting a year as you went into budget season.
Yeah, this was we
This is-
actually looked at revenues too, which was good. I mean, it's not bad to have a meeting. I mean,
Well, it is, because people like Tiger and these guys,
yeah.
they're attending all sorts of meetings at night. I mean, so it's a staff issue. It's also the issue of, the charter doesn't authorize oversight. So it's not the kind of government we have. It's constant oversight.
But the meetings, the way it's,
I wouldn't call that oversight. I would say that's making sure that there's no surprises in budget season so that we get ahead of them earlier. And you're just like, oh, we can do that in December. Well, if they've got the time and we've got more,
Fire, not doing with the other.
they have more time and we have more time in September to have such a joint meeting. I applaud the fact that they had that joint meeting and, are getting ahead of these issues.
Staff, so I really think that's.
But what staff was required to be there? I mean, there's only been one staff at this meeting tonight, an ordinary regular town council meeting. How much staff was there last night?
Number of meetings that Tiger attends.
I'm only worrying about one. I'm only worrying about last night's meeting. Why, how much staff was at that meeting?
Banker was there, or was John Hell there?
No, John was not.
Just one.
Doesn't the staff get comp time for the time that they're?
Oh, of course.
We're talking about one staff so far.
Yeah.
so, but with the original, with the meeting,
One meeting a year for budget purposes is fine, but I think multiple meetings is not what is chartered.
so, but with that meeting, it was originally just town council, and then people were like, well, emailing other people and bringing people in. So I originally, Tiger. So for that meeting, I mean, you didn't need to be there.
You're talking about parks and you're talking about your budget, so we mentioned that. So at that point in time, yeah, I feel it's necessary.
okay.
You're talking about my department. I feel it's necessary. I need to be there.
Okay.
That's all, It was a choice on my part.
And with Zoom, at least with Zoom, it's a little more convenient. You're not driving here.
Trust me, I love Zoom. I have absolutely no problem sitting in my kitchen talking to you.
May I ask something? Tucker, when you post the meetings for the subcommittee, can it say town council subcommittee? Because it was very confusing to see town council.
I thought we weren't allowed to say subcommittee.
Why not?
I don't know what that, I don't post those, each subcommittee posts their own.
I thought there was discussion last year, Penny. You said something about we're not allowed to use subcommittee. You were
They
brought
are
up to her.
committees
Yep.
of the town council. They are committees
Town
of the town
council,
council.
Parks and Rec committee,
Town council.
because we're not allowed to use subcommittees, right? The term.
We are because we are not subcommittees. We are committees of the town council. And if you had broke off from the committees into smaller groups, that would be a subcommittee of the committee of the town council. This is what came out of the big little visit to the FOIA.
Because I remember 2 years ago, there was a whole discussion that you cannot say subcommittee.
Right, it's
Well, you can, it's a subcommittee of the committee.
Committee, yeah.
okay. So I will add something to recreation. When you were astounded, the swimming pool's been there for 20 years. Lapham celebrated their 25th anniversary. They opened in September of '96. And there was a nice little party. And at the same time, we acknowledged Lynn Bond's retirement after 33 years of unbelievably dedicated service to the community. The second thing I'd like to mention is go look at Waveney House. The handicap walkway into the side porch is absolutely handsome. I mean, it really is gorgeous. And the, is the fire escape totally finished now, Tiger?
Oh, we have an issue with some of the treads, and then once the treads are replaced, they'll be complete.
Right. So, and then there was some issue about the tiles for the loge area and so forth. Did that get resolved?
Yes.
Okay. So work is well underway and looking really good.
I saw someone navigate it this morning, and it was excellent to watch. He was in a wheelchair walker, and he was able to come straight up the sidewalk. It's not a ramp anymore, it's just a sidewalk, and then come in the ramp through the door and into Waveney House with absolutely no issue. It was nice to see.
Right.
That door open now? Wasn't that door locked or something? That side door?
Yeah, I think it was had to be replaced.
So if I were, when I take the aggregate of everything you said at that meeting, I get the impression that our recreation facilities are well used, that we're selling more passes than ever,
Oh, yeah.
that our trails are being used, our fields are being used, our pools being used, our paddle courts are being used. And I might begs the question, and you have storm damage, which you mentioned in that. So when I take that in aggregate, I feel like Parks and Rec might need more money than normal, that they're getting excessive use and more than normal. Is there going to be a budget? My question is there going to be a budget implication to that big list, or was that just an ordinary course of events for Parks and Rec?
It was ordinary. I mean, Steve didn't give a number on tennis, but paddle brings in more than was budgeted for. I mean, I think the only thing that was an issue was lost revenue on was the programs because of COVID, though. They can't do some of the after school programs. They're right now doing chess and they're doing guitar, but they really haven't been able to be back in the schools like they were. I think with the camps as well, they could only have 60 participants because they still wanted to do the spacing. So the camps at Waveney, which are the recreational camps, and they couldn't go to Kiwanis. But otherwise, I think that's for Steve, but.
So these pain points like clean bathrooms, right, and older pool, these are not, they don't have budget implications. These are just smaller items and they're going to be able to work through.
The clean bathrooms was a bad contractor.
Okay.
And it could have been staffing because it was just hard to get people this year.
Okay.
But it was just something that people were bringing up and Tiger and Steve, said what the issue was.
I have one last question. How does the ice rink fit into all this? Doesn't?
Independent.
Is it?
Now, like a recreation.
It's public,
Okay, that's my
public,
question.
private.
Okay.
Private
Oh, private?
entity that's gonna operate. We're gonna accommodate parking lot renovation.
Okay. Do we get revenue from that or have an expense or we don't know? No.
They do. They will charge for the use of the rink
Mhm.
and they'll put it back into the operating of the rink.
So it's a nonprofit?
It is a
Yeah, it's
nonprofit.
nonprofit, just like Westport does it. It's run by the police department.
Public safety, Liz and Mike.
For the fire, big news, Chief Hennessy is retiring. The deputy chief that they hired, Al Bassett, I know a lot of firemen in surrounding towns and they have had nothing but wonderful things to say about the new deputy chief. I mean, really just they unanimously have said a fireman's fireman. So I was really happy to hear, that other independent opinion about him. I think right now, Chief will be resigning as effective as of October 31st, 2021. And as far as a replacement, I think it'll be it's a process and it'll be they'll solicit for resumes when the time is appropriate. As an update on the Rescue 5 truck, that's actually being painted right now. So that's, very close to completion, but there was some time disruption with some flooding at the plant, I suppose, where it's getting done. But they're looking at the end of this year or early 2022 for delivery and in service for the truck. I noticed that Waveney House, there was a submitted application for the elevator and the accessible bathrooms and entry. What's the status on that, Tiger? Anything more than just the fire marshal signing off?
Correct. That was all. We're still, right now, we're working towards a plan for the use of Waveney, and then we'll come back for the remaining work. Right now, they're sitting in the out years, the elevator on the second floor.
Right. Okay. Nothing more with fire. Although I found out that Valdanza is actually moving out and the mixed kitchen is coming in. So I just kind of caught my eye when I heard that. But on police, right now, the big issue is the police building, which we'll have our joint meeting next week for presentations. So there's really not much more I have with the police. There's one issue, though, I want to kind of throw out there, not really for us to discuss now, because it will be extremely detailed discussion, how the town will handle cannabis. And there's now legalization for recreational use. Many towns are just starting to grapple with how they will handle it, whether they will outlaw it. It's up for most of the towns handle the issue through planning and zoning, whether they will allow a dispensary in town. There can't be more than one dispensary in a town with 25,000 people or less. So it's something for the town to start having a discussion about how we will handle it, how we can regulate it within our borders. Even if we outlaw the dispensary, which we could, there's still delivery services are allowed to come in and deliver here. So there's a lot of moving parts with the legislation. There's new rules coming out almost every week on it, about it. The towns will be able to get a 3% sales tax from the sale of it in the town if there is a dispensary.
Okay.
It makes a difference to anybody, I don't know, but it's a long discussion that needs to be had. But the town should start thinking about how we're going to approach that.
So I have a note from John Goodwin to Paul at our 9/28 meeting. So put this on your calendars, but at our September 28 meeting, we will have a public hearing on a regulation amendment to effectively ban in New Canaan. So if you feel one way or the other about that, show up on the 28th and make your opinion known.
Great.
What would be the role of the town council?
Well, if they don't, so if P and Z doesn't do something, we have the option of passing an ordinance. So when they said that they were working on it, we backed off. Same thing with cell tower height. They said, we've got this. And we said, then we don't need to pass an ordinance. So they're working on it, and they're going to take it up on the 28th.
So if they're not strong enough, we could then
During
supplement.
their meetings, they sounded like they were pretty strong.
Good.
And so,
Great.
that's.
You could pass an ordinance anyway. But
The
Steve
law-
doesn't like to pass an ordinance unless he takes two away.
But does the law still allow delivery?
Yes.
So like Uber Eats?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. You cannot prohibit that. The state will preempt that. The delivery is legal in the, cross border.
Okay.
So does anybody other than planning and zoning need to be looking at it right now?
As long as planning and zoning makes the right decision, that takes care of everything. Because
Okay, well,
they just say-
that's good. I just didn't know if it needed to, come at it from multiple directions.
Well, if they have a public hearing, I'm sure the Board of Ed will be speaking on this subject also, or at least get their feelings.
You think so?
No, yeah, I've heard their position already, so. I'm pretty
Good.
sure They would speak.
I hope it agrees with what our position is.
Yes.
I don't think it makes sense to work it in parallel. I think because you might end up with conflicts between, so we should allow their process to complete, and then we should, as a body, reflect on, How'd it go?
I'm fine. I'm fine with that. It's just that some issues actually need to be addressed in multiple ways because they hit different laws,
Right.
you know, and so if this is one of those issues, I think we should be proactively setting it, but if it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to speak with Chief Kolakowski as well. The police have a big, say in it. I mean, right now, under the law, that if you smell marijuana coming from a car, that's no longer reasonable suspicion to stop it. I thought that was pretty stunning. Also, it's legal to possess 1.5 ounces. You could smoke it in public, walking down Main or out.
Right.
So whether, P&Z handles that or we handle that, we have to see how P&Z handles and how extensive their.
I can't walk around with a open can of beer. So is that something we could, as Penny points out, is that something we could ordinance? Is that something that you're capable of finding out what others have done and seeing if there are recommendations that we should take down the ordinance track that P&Z cannot take, you'll let us know.
Right. Good.
I was just gonna say that I attended a webinar this morning with Mass CT, which was all the towns were represented. This topic was talked about at great length. And they're gonna send out a report letting us know how each town is handling it. So if I get the hands on that, anytime soon.
Yeah, it's so new and all these towns, I mean, everyone's trying to figure it out. But also what we will see is as you can imagine, because it will be a multi-billion-dollar industry for the state. I mean, everybody's jumping on board with it.
Yeah.
I mean, all the ancillary businesses are coming, law firms, of course, they have to get their little beaks and everything. But I mean, the construction industry, whoever can be a part of this industry, towns will be lobbied to allow dispensaries or to allow, manufacturing plants. And so there's a lot going on. I wouldn't be surprised if First Selectman gets contacted by lobbyists. So we could expect,
Can I ask you, can you grow it then?
You can grow it, yes.
Sure.
And you
So
can
that's
keep up
gonna
to
be-
5 ounces in your house.
I thought you couldn't grow it yet.
As of October 1st,
Particularly
as of
ex-felons.
October 1st, if you're a medical card holder, you can grow it. So
Right.
that's
Only.
Only.
Particularly
And after
ex-felons.
that?
Well, then it's a year from
Because they were
2022.
hurt by that.
Well, they probably want.
So I just want a quick update. Mark and I like to get into this committee reports with our building committee for the library. So nothing really new on the library side, other than I know Kevin left the room, but he's got the MOUs ready to sign it. Just they were going back and forth a little bit on the legal side because the town is acting in a financial role like a bank, the fiduciary responsibilities. There's a little bit more legal
Due diligence.
that has to happen. So that's in the works. We should hear about that by the time we get together again. A referendum, I sent around an email, but the referendum, 650 to 700 signatures are due by 10/1. So we'll know as of 10/1 if there is going to be a referendum. If there is a referendum triggered, then we'll get together as we do with the start times, go through the language, go through the voting, dates, voting times, voting locations. Those are all things that we have to decide. The last day to hold a referendum is actually 10/30, which is Halloween weekend, which is Saturday, which I would imagine we should be thinking about moving this forward. So here's what we're up against, because we are going to have to decide if we're going to, during that time, the Board of Ed is using their facilities basically full time. So
No, I've spoken with Katrina and Jay Egan today, and we've reserved the 30th right now if in fact we have a referendum, because they have, unless we go to SACS on the 23rd, that's the other option.
well, the date on the 30th was initially, we've got some pushback from start time people because of the inconvenience of that, of the timing of, based on being able to get to the polls, and the day before Halloween that's kind of an interesting day to have it, but yeah.
From noon to 8 on the 30th?
Yeah.
Why is that wrong? I'm sorry.
I mean, I've already heard from people like the 30th is not a good day, but I'm okay with if it has to happen. It's gonna happen. Yeah. So
Some people make.
and it's also a week before the election too, which is
Yeah.
not even a week. It's a few days. before the
Days, yeah,
election.
November 2nd.
So you're asking people to go to the polls on the 30th and then the 2nd,
Yep.
back to back.
This volume, we had a big conference call,
Yeah.
and legal and everybody to figure out the dates that we can do this. In fact, I need to know everybody's availability if we have to have the special meeting on the 4th and the 5th. I've heard back from some of you. Because I've held both of those dates in this room for a special meeting in the event that we do need to have it. So I'd love to lock that in.
I'm free. Both
What day of the week are they?
Monday and Tuesday.
Monday, Tuesday, 4th and 5th.
Okay, I'll be open.
For both?
Yeah.
I heard from Waveney.
I'm both.
Okay. So then Monday was not the preferred day. Mike has a conflict on Monday and you preferred not Monday because there's a Board of Ed meeting that night. So based on what you all just told me, then it looks
Do it
like
the 5th, right?
Tuesday's better.
is the day that works for everybody.
What time is that, Kristen?
Are they collecting signatures?
I don't know.
I haven't
I don't know.
been aware of any activity.
This is all stuff that we just prepare for. And if it happens, it happens. So we can't, because of the short window, you literally have, as we know with the start times, I mean, we had to jump through hoops to get that done. So, I mean, it was, so.
If they turn in the petition ahead of time, we can set this meeting even earlier, but we're anticipating that they would wait until the last date, the 1st.
Yeah, well, they'll need, I mean, with 650 signatures, you need, every day you need time. But I don't know if they're out there or not. I haven't heard anything.
So hold October 5th at 7 o'clock and we'll know on the 1st if that date has.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. That was it.
All in favor of adjourning?
Who's made the motion?
I make a motion
Okay.
and Penny seconds that motion. Thank you, Tiger.
Thank you, man. Have a good night.
Good night.